Konnichiwa minasan, Gitsapalooza ni yokoso.
Hello everyone and welcome to Gitsapalooza. I'm going to take some time today and go over the 4 scenarios that will be used at the Adepticon Bushido Grand Masters tournament. I'll review each one, we'll talk about scoring, we'll talk about the rules, and hopefully clear up any questions you might have. The first mission I'm going to talk about is Botoku, and let's just start at the top and go through all of its stats. So first of all, we have objectives and a 4-inch zone of control in the center of the table. You can deploy in any fashion as part of this mission. However, we are going to follow the printed picture here. So we're going to be doing corner deployment. The scenario objectives are large. There's 2 of them. One will be directly in front of your deployment zone. One will be directly in front of your opponent's deployment zone. Yours is considered a friendly objective and as such is worth 1 scenario point. The one in front of your opponent's deployment zone is considered an enemy objective and as such it is worth 3 scenario points. The 4-inch objective in the center, the zone of control, is neutral and is worth 2 scenario points. So it's going away from you, it's 1, 2, and 3. I want to remind you that for controlling the center, you need to have not only more models than your opponent completely within the 4-inch diameter circle, but you also need to have more rice cost in models in that 4-inch diameter circle, and this does not include equipment. So just keep that in mind. As far as the 250 millimeter objectives, it is a simple action to pray at them, which means you can't combine it with any other activity. So it's sort of like turning idols. You have to walk up to it, get into base to base with 1 action, and then the next activation, if you want to, you can pray at it. So you have 6 prayer tokens available to spend, and so spend them wisely. Looking at the victory conditions, there are no victory points which are distinct from scenario points. So little points versus big points. The 3 big points, victory points, are awarded on turn 4, 5, and 6 based on whoever has the most scenario points at each of the last 3 turns. There is no resets in this game, so it is cumulative. So you want to just get in and get those scenario points as fast as you can and as big as you can. So there's Botoku. It is a fun mission. It's one of my favorites. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Now we're going to take a look at Ichi no writin. This includes an open Vim, which means you both declare it ahead of time, so each of you knows who the other person's Vim is, and 2 8-inch zones of control. It has baseline deployment, so you put your own models up against your edge of the board. The zones of control, because they're staggered, are classified as either friendly, which would be the close one, or enemy, which would be the furthest one away from you. Your friendly is only worth 1 scenario point if you control it. Your enemy zone, however, is worth 3 scenario points if you control it. Once again, a reminder, to control a zone, you need to have more models and more points in models. This does not include equipment, so it's just the actual points on your card for your models. The game length is variable, so on turn 5 you will roll to see if the game continues. And there is no other scenario interaction like simple interactions or anything. So all it is the Vim and controlling those zones. So the victory conditions. At the end of turn 3, there's a victory point for whoever has the most scenario points. At the end of turn 5, there's a victory point for whoever has the most scenario points. And then the last victory point is to the player whose Vim is closest to the opponent's deployment baseline in the end phase of the last turn of the game. Now let's take a look at that because that's important. It doesn't state that it's handed out in turn 6 or anything like that. It just says in the end phase of the last turn of the game. So let us say, for example, that you are playing and you've just started turn 5 and you time out. So the game has to end because you've run out of time. You would count the Vim, but you would do it from where the Vim was at the end of turn 4 because that was the last point at which you had an end phase. That understood? Should be pretty straightforward. So if you know you're running out of time, when you get to the end of a turn, make note of who would get the Vim point and then keep playing and see if you can get another turn in. But it's just the end phase of the last complete turn, basically, is where you get that last victory point from. So somebody's always going to get that last victory point unless both of you are on the baseline, in which case you tie, and nobody's awarded that third point. Let's take a look at Kiai. Kiai uses 6 circular objectives. The original scenario called for 50 millimeter, which would be the large objectives. However, I felt that was just too much of a burden for the people who are putting together the gaming boards to produce. A couple of us are doing 8 boards, and that would be almost 50 millimeter objectives, which are expensive and difficult to produce. So I just switched them down to 30 mil objectives simply for pragmatic reasons. Everything else about the scenario has stayed the same. So let's take a look at it. We have baseline deployment. We have 6 small 30 millimeter objectives arranged in this hexagonal pattern. 2 of them are friendly, that would be the blue ones. 2 are neutral, the gray, and 2 are enemy. You have a fixed game length of 6 turns, and this is another prayer-based mission. But in this case, you have 5 prayer tokens, only 5, instead of 6 like you did in the last one. So you have 5 chances to score points. That's it in the whole game. So you have to use them wisely. As always, the friendly objectives are only worth 1 scenario point. The neutrals are worth 2. The enemies are worth 3. So obviously you want to get as far into your opponent's background or backfield before you try to score in order to get as many points as you can. So let's look at the victory conditions. Now the first 2 scenarios that we looked at had the victory points for the most part being handed out at the end of the game. This has a more even distribution. So at the end of turn 2, you get the player with the most scenario points gets a victory point. And then at the end of turn 4, this happens again. And finally, at the end of turn 6, this happens. If you don't get to turn 6, you don't get to assign that last victory point. So keep that in mind. Play fast. The other thing you should take note of is in the lower left, it says reset 3-5. That basically means after every victory point is handed out, you reset the scenario points and you go back to 0-0. So you're starting fresh every 2 turns. That should help if you really got waxed early on, but you can fight back. This should help you out and help you be competitive. So I like the resetting. It keeps things from getting roll. Now I can't find the word. It keeps you from getting rolled over if you just happen to have a little spate of bad dice rolling. You can still fight back. So there we go. That is Kiai. It is a pretty simple scenario, but I'll tell you, that prayer stuff is tricky. I find it a lot more challenging than any of the other ways of scoring points in Bushido, be it simple interaction by turning idols, for example, or controlling zones. The prayers are tough because you can get yourself in a bind and then you're just toast. I mean, once you run out of prayer tokens, you're dead in the water. So play it wisely. Lastly, we're going to look at Sifu's Art. This is actually a scenario that I concocted and convinced Jason to let me try. It's based on Osatsu, and Osatsu has the same layout, and I absolutely love this layout. I like the fact that it, like a couple of the other actually scenarios we're using, it uses multiple ways of scoring points, and I really think that's fun. The problem with Osatsu is that there are some aspects of it that are kind of hard to wrap your mind around, especially when it comes to scoring. And the last thing I wanted you guys to do was be confused, and then we have to try to explain things, and maybe we get it, maybe we don't. So I'm too dumb to understand Osatsu. So I'm not assuming you guys are, but since I'm the TO, I have to understand what we're playing. And if I don't, then, we're kind of out of luck. So anyway, I concocted this version that uses Osatsu's layout, but is actually very straightforward in its approach. I think it's fun. I've gotten good feedback from the people who've played it so far. I've played it several times. I think it's fun. It's kind of a brawl, but anyway, we'll walk through it and we'll see. You'll see how it goes. I think after 2 prayer missions, you guys are going to be desperate for just being able to beat the crap out of somebody. So this is your mission. So what do we have? We have 2 8-inch zones of control, and we effectively have 3 idols, for lack of a better term, 30 millimeter objectives, where a simple influence will turn them 90 degrees. We have a simple influence for the idols. I just talked about that, and the normal actions for taking over the zones of control. You see, everything is neutral. Everything's worth 2 points. So for those victory points that are awarded for scenario points, and the scenario points are strictly earned by the zones of control. The idols are their own thing, so the idols don't generate scenario points, but the zones of control do. So every time you own a zone of control at the end of the turn, you generate 2 scenario points for yourself. So let's walk through it. We have baseline deployment, and then the victory conditions are as follows. At the end of turn 2, the player with the most scenario points gets the first victory point. And again, that is strictly the zones of control, and each zone of control is worth 2 points. Good. Now you're going to earn these every turn, but you're only going to award the victory point at the end of turn 2. So let's say you just had a dominating performance and you controlled both the zones turn 1 and turn 2. You would get 2 points every time you control the zone. So that'd be 4 points in turn 1, 4 points in turn 2. So that would give you 8 points, 8 scenario points to nil, which would result in you getting a victory point. All right. So we go on to turns 3 and 4. Turns 3 and 4 are basically idols. So these are simple influence. That means you have to walk up to the idol with one activation, and then use another activation once you're in base to base to turn the idol. You can't move around the idol or do anything if you want to influence it. Turning that idol 90 degrees takes your entire action. And then as a reminder, you can't use a complex action. In other words, you can't spend 2 activations to turn the idol 180 degrees. It just doesn't work that way. You have to do one at a time, and that's so you both have a chance to respond to one another. So it benefits you, it benefits your opponent, and it just keeps the game from getting a little out of control. Okay, and then in the last 2 turns, so turns 5 and turn 6, the last victory point is awarded for scenario points. Once again, so you go from circles, zones of control, then the middle of the game is only idols, and then the end of the game is only zones of control. So zones of control, idols, zones of control. And that's it, except just a reminder that you reset the scenario points on 3 and 5. That's kind of redundant. In essence, you'd really only need to reset those in between turn 4 and turn 5 so that you started 5 with a clean slate. But this kind of is more in line with the normal instructions. So again, to be clear, turns 1 and 2, you're going for the 8-inch zones of control. And after turn 2, you basically table your scenario points and you're back to 0-0. Then turn 3 and 4, you don't care about scenario points, you don't care about the zones of control. All you care about are those idols. And whoever has the most idols facing their direction gets that second victory point. And then turns 5 and 6, you go back to the zones of control. You don't care about the idols, strictly zones of control, and you're fighting out for control of those zones, and those will generate your scenario points. So, piece of cake. And it should be good. This is a Adepticon approved scenario. We'll see how people like it, but it should be pretty brutal, and it also should be pretty fun because you're just kind of going at it. Everybody charges towards the center of the table and beats the snot out of each other and tries to score objectives. It'll give elite armies a chance to shine a little bit because it kind of forces your opponents to come towards you. Horde armies also can potentially shine because you have more activations, you have more models, so you have increased, as with all Bushido scenarios, you have increased ability to score objectives just because you have more activations. So I like it. It should offer some bonuses to both types of armies, and that should be pretty fun. Anyway, that's it for Sifu's Art. I think I've gone over everything correctly. I'm sure somebody will pipe up if I haven't, but I think I have things pretty well under control at this point. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody at Adepticon. It is going to be really fun. I'm excited about it. Last year, at this point, I was a wreck. This year, not so much. I'm getting a lot of help. I'm only providing 8 tables. The other 12 are coming from other people. Plus, there may be a couple of more floating around in case we have some problems. I've got tons of prize support from not only from GCT, but from other people as well. I'll go into that. I'll do a final wrap-up video. This will be the last official video. So if you're playing the tournament, this will be the last one you need to watch. But I will do kind of a chatty one in a week or so, and we'll go from there. But I hope this was helpful. I may just, in general purposes, go over some of these scenarios, not for Adepticon necessarily, but just go through the book and talk about some of these scenarios, kind of the same way we did here. So if there's some things you're unclear about, we'll just go through them together and see if we can get them straightened out. I really like the fact that in the tournament pack there are a ton of new scenarios, and that they've made things more flexible. So, some of them say for deployment they'll give you options, like any deployment or all deployments or whatever. So I like that. Shows some flexibility and allows you to custom make your games a little bit. Anyway, that's it. Don't want to ramble on too long. I hope I've answered most of your questions. Certainly you can post below if you have anything else, or you can look for me on the Bushido the Game Facebook page, and I'm there. You can just contact me there, and we should be good. All right, guys. Well, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Take it easy until then. Get your models painted, get the bases done, make everything look pretty, and practice, practice, practice. Thank you for joining me on Gitsapalooza.